And we are live.
Live.
Woo!
Live from my kitchen.
And we have a couple people
Got a
starting
couple.
to come in, so we'll just wait for everyone. But welcome as you arrive.
Hello. The sun decided to come out. I've got these lines across me. It's a creative choice.
It's fashion.
Exactly.
Looks like you're in a seashell.
Yeah. Let's go with that.
Yeah, you're inside of a seashell.
This is my welcome to my seashell studio.
Yeah.
Which is giant. All right. People are here.
Cool. Well, welcome as people start to arrive. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Jacob. I am the training coordinator at QSC, and I'll just be helping to moderate the webinar. So you won't hear a ton from me, but you will hear a lot from, obviously, Jason, and then he's going to have two experts helping him out, Golden and Eric. If you guys want to go ahead and say hi.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? Eric, Tech Support, QSC.
Golden.
Cool.
Very good.
And, of course, we have Jason.
Hi, guys. I'll be talking a lot. You will be sick of my voice by the end of this, I promise. But
Well, I mean, it looks like it's kind of slowed down, the trickle in, so
okay.
we go ahead and get started, or at least let everybody know a couple ground rules.
Yeah, let's start with the ground rules.
We want everyone to feel like they have a voice here, so if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the Q&A. The chat's not going to be available, but the Q&A will, so go ahead and put your questions there. And we'll do our best to answer. Eric and Golden are going to do a lot of the answering of the questions, but if they find anything that kind of fits the topic really well, we're going to throw it to Jason. And if you do have a microphone, we'll be able to unmute you so you can actually chat with Jason personally and with Golden and Eric if they are able to help as well. But we do ask that you stay on topic. Getting a lot of questions that are off topic is going to kind of sidetrack Jason, and this will be a 3-hour webinar instead of 45 minutes to an hour.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's try to stay on topic. If you do have questions that are outside of the topic, we're not going to completely ignore them, but we'll offer to answer them, communicate with you via email once the webinar is over. Also, we'll have a recording of the webinar that will be sent out to you in your email once the webinar is over. Hopefully later this afternoon we'll be able to get that out. Hopefully we'll turn that around pretty quick. If not, you should see that pop up Monday or Tuesday at the latest. So look out for that. That should be helpful for you. If you miss any part of it, if you come in later, if you have to bail early, or if I went too fast in certain sections, I'm going to keep a pretty decent pace through this. There's a lot of information to get through. So I'm going to try to squeeze it all into the hour time frame there. But if you felt like you missed a little bit of it, you'll have that recording so you can review that on your own time. And I think that's the rules.
Yeah. Oh, we also do have the ability to raise your hand, but if you do that, please still include your question in the Q&A. That way we're able to see it and we're able to figure out what the best method of answering it will be. That's all I got.
Okay, that's all I got too. Shall we begin? Let's dive right into it. All right, switch my slide. So today's topic is recording directly to a DAW with the TouchMix-30. This is a feature that is exclusive to the 30 out of the 3 models. So we're going to be looking at that recording feature. We're going to take a look at the initial setup and how to configure your DAW session. We're going to look at how to route your channels and also how to monitor your audio in your recording session from your control room for multiple points in your setup. We'll also go through how to create custom headphone mixes for your performers, and then how to actually perform your final mix down on the TouchMix-30 itself running back into the DAW. So that's a pretty neat workflow that you can set up for yourself, and you could use the 30 itself and your DAW in series of each other, so you can kind of take advantage of both. And we'll take a look at how to set that all up and deal with a lot of routing and things like that. So it should be pretty fun. And let's go ahead and just get right into it, shall we? One thing I do want to mention, I'm going to switch to this here, is I will be showing you a significant amount of my DAW session here. The particular DAW that I am working with today is called Reaper. It's just the one that I've got on my computer right now. It's a great software. It's free. You can download it for free if you don't have a software and you're looking for one, or if you're looking to start off with one. It's a great option. It works very well. It's free. However, there are a great number of softwares out there. Everything that I'm going to show you today is a functionality of every single DAW software that there is, but it might look a little different depending on the DAW you're using. So everything I'm going to show you will be available in whatever DAW you're working with, but it might be located somewhere else in the DAW. It might look a little bit different, so just be aware of that as we go through this. Okay, so recording to the DAW from the TouchMix-30 Pro is actually super easy. So the first thing you're going to actually need, just to start with the bare basics here, is a USB A to B cable. That is the A connection and then the B connection. It's the square to the flat rectangle. And that will connect your TouchMix to your computer or your laptop. And you can run it right into your DAW. If you're using a Mac or an Apple computer, you have what's called core audio. And so that machine will automatically recognize the TouchMix as an audio interface or as an audio source. And from there, once you open your DAW, you can go ahead and select it pretty easily and take care of all your routing, however you need to set that up. If you're using a Windows machine, you do need an ASIO driver or an ASIO driver, which is available for free. And I'll get Jacob the link for that actually, so he can paste that in the chat in a minute here. But if you just go to our website, qsc.com, navigate to the TouchMix page, there will be a link at the bottom that takes you to the ASIO driver. It's a free download, and you will need that to connect your TouchMix-30 to your computer and then into your DAW. All right, so let's just start off here. I've already done all that, and just to preface, I am using a Windows machine, so I'll show you that driver in just a second here. But just to make our initial connection, I've connected my USB cable from my mixer into my computer tower here. And the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm just going to go into record play mode here. And we're going to want to be in this mode. This is our DAW mode. And if it doesn't look like this, you can press this record mode button right here. And you'll get this window here. These menu options. You've got your stereo playback option, your multi-track USB option, and then your multi-track DAW option. So this is the one that you're going to select for this functionality. So I'll select that there. And then you've got this screen, and it's more or less it's showing you some signal indicators. So if there's signal passing to or from any of your channels over that USB connection, these will illuminate there. And that's just about it. Most of the control when you're in this mode is going to be done in the DAW software itself. So the only thing we're really doing here is kind of setting it up for that initial transmission. And then the other thing we can do if we want to is we have our track buttons here if we want to be returning our audio back to the mixer from the DAW, which we will look at momentarily. The other thing we have here is our sample rate option. We have 44.1 or 48K, the option to toggle between the two of those there. For what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to change this. I'm going to set this to 48. That looks good. Okay. Now I'm going to switch over to my, what we're going to do on the mixer for now. We'll come back to this, but let's go ahead and take a look at the DAW and look at how we're going to configure that to work with our mixer here. So I can pop over here. So here's my DAW session. This is Reaper. This is a blank slate. I just opened this, so nothing is happening yet. And just to show you, if I open this, this is the ASIO driver, if you can see that. So it's pretty simple. You're just going to want to pop it open when you make your connection before you open your DAW, and make sure that the ASIO driver is seeing your mixer. And I can see here, yep, USB audio device QSC TM30 Pro. It's even telling me my sample rate here. And then there are a couple of other settings if you tab over through here, including the I/O buffer settings and things like that. So we're going to come back into this a little bit later in the lesson, but I just wanted to show you that. So here we go. Here is my DAW session. The first thing I need to do is make sure that the sample rate matches what I've set on my mixer. So I set my mixer to 48K, and I did have the option for 44.1 as well. But But since I've configured it on my mixer, I'm going to go in here and set this up. Now, this may look different on your DAW, so I'm going to show you what it looks like in mine. For me, I'm just going to go to File, and then I'm going to go to Project Settings. In whatever DAW you're working with, there should be something that is labeled relatively similar to this. So I got my project settings here, which is telling me, is right there, my first controller, that is my project sample rate. And I can see in my DAW here that it is set to 44.1. So I'm going to want to go ahead and change that to 48 and then hit OK. So I've reset that. Now what I need to do is actually select my TouchMix as my interface or as my audio source. And for me, I'm going to go into the Options menu and go to Preferences. So project settings and preferences are typically pretty general terms for your options here to find these various settings. So I would start, if you're not sure where these are in your particular DAW, I would look for those terms within your settings and your menus there. Okay, and I've already got this set up. Look at me. But just to go backwards here, if I were set to its normal operation, which would be the it's called direct sound for me, or if you're using your native computer ins and outs as the DAW option here, you'd want to change that. And for me, I go to Audio System, and I just select ASIO because I'm using my ASIO driver on my Windows machine. If you're on a Mac, the TouchMix-30 will just present itself as an option directly. You don't have to select ASIO or Core Audio. It'll just pop up right as an option. But now that I've got my ASIO selected, it does recognize my QSC TouchMix-30 Pro audio as my source here, as my interface. And then you may or may not have these options here to specify, the range of all of your inputs and outputs. If you do, it's a good idea to just make sure that you've got all of them selected. So your first input is input 1 and your last input is 32. And then additionally, you want the same number of outputs because that gives us the ability to then route our channels back out to the mixer, which comes in handy on multiple occasions. So I've got that all set up, and I'm going to hit OK. Okay, so now I'm set to go. Now all I need to do is create a track in here and assign that track to one of my inputs on my mixer. So I'm going to hit Track here, and then Insert New Track, and there's my new track there. If I hit Record, there we go, boom. So I basically armed the channel to record here, and I do have a microphone plugged into input 1 of my mixer, and so typically, the first track you set up is automatically going to kind of just grab input 1 on whatever your interface is, and so that worked pretty immediately. If you needed to reroute this, if you needed to change this at all, you will have routing settings here on. For me, I've got it right on my channel here. Again, this may be somewhere different depending on the DAW you're working with. Most DAWs that I'm familiar with will have routing options directly on the channel here, and you also have a mixer view down here, and you've got routing options there. So if you needed to change the source here, I could go to this input option here, and then I can go to this menu here, and you can see I've got all 32 of my inputs on my TouchMix-30 as options here. So as if I start to build channels out, if I start getting more and more channels here, so I got 5 tracks there. If I arm all of these, they all come to life, and they are all set to input 1. And so your first channel you create will kind of configure itself because it's going to just be grabbing that first input here. However, every subsequent channel or track that you create in your session will also be defaulted to input 1. So here's where you're going to start needing to go and reroute things. So I'll just set this to 2, and then I'll set my track 3 to input 3, and then I'll set my track 4 to input 4, and then I'll have track 5 to input 5. And you do notice that we have a mono and a stereo option here. So if you did want to be grabbing the channels on the mixer as stereo inputs instead of just the individual direct mono inputs, you can choose the stereo option there, and you can see this. So now I've got inputs 1/input 2, so it's basically using 1 and 2 as a single stereo input. If you're doing that, you probably want to link the channels on the mixer itself to complete that functionality. So there you go. So now I've got 5 channels all routed appropriately. I actually only have 1 microphone though, so these other 4 channels are inconsequential. But just to give you a quick demonstration, we can see my audio in here. If I talk into this mic, it is transferring over quite nicely. On the mixer itself, you do want to make sure that you have your preamp level dialed in pretty adequately. So you want to find that optimal preamp setting. Again, we talked about that a couple weeks ago when we talked about gain structure. Just make sure that you've got a nice healthy level on your preamp, and you can see there we've got a nice healthy signal into the DAW, because that is where the signal is coming from on your mixer. When you direct it over the USB, it's pulling it directly from the preamp, so it's not passing through any of the mixer processing at all. It's just the dry signal from the preamp. It gets sent right back over that USB cable into your session, so you're essentially pulling all of your channels in completely dry, and then you've got your processing in your DAW here, so you can manipulate those however you need to. But basically we want a clean, dry source into the DAW for our recording, and then we can process it from that point however we need to. Okay, I've got this going. I'm armed to record. I can see my audio. If I simply hit record in my DAW session now, I'm recording. There we go. And I'm going to talk into this mic for a few seconds, and we can see my recording happening in real time. See, it's that easy. Just took a few minutes to set up, and now I am off and running. I'm off to the races. We are recording. I'm going to go ahead and stop that. Cool. Yes, and I want to save all of that. Now, obviously, I've recorded all 5 of my channels. 2 through 5 are blank because I have no inputs there. But we can clearly see my first channel here. It's got a nice waveform on there, so that recorded. And if I were to play this back, I'm going to take that off of ARM. And now we can see that it is playing back, but we're not hearing it, all right, because we are using the TouchMix-30 as the interface, which means that the DAW software is not only receiving its audio from the TouchMix-30, it is also expecting to be playing that back out through that interface, or through that device. So if we want to hear this back, we need to kind of reroute our output here to go back to the mixer as well. And we're going to do that by rerouting the main output. And in Reaper here, this is my main output channel right here, my master output for my DAW session. And I have this button right here called Route. Now this, again, probably is going to be different on every DAW, so you need to figure out, where your master output routing options are and get into those. But I'm just going to open this option here, and you can see it will default to outs 1 and 2. So what it is doing is it essentially returning its master output channel to the mixer on inputs 1 and 2. That's just kind of standard operating procedure for most interfaces. The DAW just expects it to go out to the first 2 available output options, which in our case on our mixer are going to be channels 1 and 2. So we don't really want that option. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that and create a brand new route for my master output. And then it's going to be that's going to look like this. So if I click in there, I have all my different routing options all the way down through 31 and 32. And then if I wanted to, beyond the stereo options here, I can actually select any one of these individually as a mono source as well. So that can get pretty interesting. But for now, I'm going to choose outputs 31 and 32. The reason I'm doing that, and I'll show you that momentarily, is because outputs 31 and 32 are going to be the 2-track playback channel on the mixer itself. So you have the 2-track record channel. Let's go ahead and take a look at that now. I've already configured this, so I know we're going to be good to go here. I'll pop over back to this for a second. So over here, if I select my stereo in / 2-track bank option at the top, I get this screen. And my last 2 channels here are 2-track playback and then my 2-track record. It doesn't have any indication, doesn't have a name, but this is your stereo recording bus on the mixer itself, basically. So anytime you want to just capture a stereo recording on the mixer directly, this is where you would do it, and this is essentially just grabbing your master output. And so your master output is being funneled into here, so you can record that master output as a stereo recording. And then if you're going to listen to this recording back, it would play back through this channel directly right here. That is your 2-track playback channel. So what I've done is I'm using this as my source for my DAW. So now I'm listening to my DAW session output through my 2-track playback channel here. So what I'm going to want to do is give that some level, because we're going to want to hear that. And then since I routed it in the DAW session, I'll go ahead and play this back. So I want to reset this, and I'm going to turn this down. I don't know how that's going to be. So, here we go. Talk into this microphone. So we're now hearing it, and if I go back to my mixer, we can see that recording is
took a few minutes
coming through this channel,
now I am off and running. I'm off to the
we are
races.
listening to
I'm gonna go
my voice again. So much of my voice. So there you go. So we recorded into the DAW, and we set ourselves up to play back from the DAW. And that's it. So now, essentially what we're doing, we can arm any of our tracks if we have a full ensemble that we're tracking all at once, or an individual performer, whatever we're doing. We've got channels in our DAW here set up, and then we've got our master output routed back to the mixer so we can monitor this output in our control room or wherever we're set up. Now, taking it a step further, I'm going to go ahead, select, there we are. In addition to just routing my master output, to my 2-track playback accordingly, I'm also going to take each individual track in my session, and I'm going to reroute it back to its input on the mixer itself. And there's a couple of reasons to do this, but just to show you how to do it, that is going to take place in the actual routing options. So if I make this a little bigger for now, oh, that didn't help at all. Fader stayed the same size. Okay, so you've on all of your channels in your mix mode. For me in Reaper here, I've got this little button that says route, very similar to how I routed my master output. And if I click that, I get this option here. And this is basically telling me I've got this this guy checked right here, so it's going to my master send. So this channel is being routed to the master in my DAW session. I want to give it another one, so I'm going to say add send. Boop-a-doo. Add new send. There we go. And I want this to be 1 and 2. I think I did that right. Let's see. Oh, I think I have to arm this. Record input, record output. Mono. Yep. All right. Now I've got mono source 1. And there we go. So let's see if that worked. There is another way to do this, which I will show you momentarily. But on my mixer now, let's just see if I got this right. What I'm going to need to do, once I've got it routed back to my channel here, on the mixer itself, I'm going to simply engage the track button for that channel. Now if I play this, let's see if we get audio here.
There we go.
Yeah, we do not. All right, I think I need to go about this another way. I'm so good at this. Okay, aside from your individual routing options, which admittedly in Reaper are a bit clunky, so the way I actually like to do this is using the matrix option, and most DAW software has this option as well. So what I'm going to want to do, I'm going to want to go to options, and let's see, where's my, I started a new session, so all my settings are brand new. Give me just a minute here. Oh, view. I'm an idiot. Right, matrix routing, there we go. Okay, so here is my routing matrix, and so basically what you have here is all of your master outputs here. So I've got 1 through 5, or sorry, my main master output of my DAW, and then my 5 channels in my session, right? And then under here are all of the actual options, all the input options on the mixer itself. And then on this axis here, I've got the same thing. So I've got my master output here, my channels, and then all of my output routing options on the mixer here. And you can see I've got input 1 selected as its input 1 source from the mixer, as well as going to the main output there. I'm actually going to delete this one. So there you go. So these boxes here indicate that all 5 of these channels, see all 5 of these inputs here, are being directed to the master output, and they're being taken, the input source are inputs 1 through 5 respectively on the mixer. And then we have all these other options here, and we can see if we take a look at our master output line here, if we go follow this all the way down, this is indicating this box is checked here, and this is for 31 and 32 stereo. Well, it's indicated as 31 stereo, which is implied 31, 32. And that, again, that's how I set that up for my 2-track playback channel, right? Beyond this, if we keep going down this axis, I have all my other output options on the mixer itself. So all I have to do is designate each of my channels to right back to its output here. So I've got track 1, I'm going to send this to out 1. Track 2, I'm going to send to out 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so on. So now, all 5 of my tracks are being directed back out to their channels on the mixer, as well as my master output in my DAW session, okay? So we've got them going 2 different places, and that's important. Hopefully you guys were able to follow that. Now I'm going to go back to my mix view here. View, mixer, cool. All right, so I've done that. Now, if I go back to my viewer and I've got this set to track, if I hit play here, there we go.
And
I can see that level here. And if I actually stop this, if I go over here and real quick, I'm going to mute that because it's going there too, right? So it's going to the master output and we're routing our master output to the 2-track playback here. So we're going to hear that through that regardless. I'm going to mute that for a second and make sure that I've got it going back to my track. I saw the level, so I know that it is there, but just for the sake of this, I'm going to play this. I can see that, and if I increase that level,
talking to this mic for a few seconds,
there I am.
See my recording happening in real time.
Okay.
See, it's that easy.
It's that easy. So there we go. So I've got tracks in my DAW routed back to their channels in the mixer, as well as the main output. Main output routed to my 2-track playback, and we're all good. So that is sort of the basics of how to set this up routing-wise. Of course, you could extrapolate this out for however many channels. You can utilize every single channel on the mixer, and that gives you a full 32 channel interface, which you can use for your recordings and things like that, and then route all that stuff back to the mixer. So you've kind of got a few different options on how to play back and how to listen to those channels through the mixer itself. Okay, so now we've done playing back. So now I'm going to introduce something that is really, really special and a little unique to this mixer. It is the monitoring feature. Now the monitoring feature on the TouchMix-30 is a little different than what you get on the 8 and 16 because it has this DAW interface mode, this feature here. And if I want to engage this, I'm going to go ahead and press this monitor button right there, right above your wheel. So if I press that, we get this menu here. This is our monitor mode. Now, on the back of your mixer, there is a dedicated XLR stereo output right next to the main output. So you have your main left and right output, and then right next to that is the monitor left and right output. So you're going to actually want to connect those connections to your control room or your tracking room monitors. And that is going to give you the ability to tap into a whole bunch of different options when you're listening to things back in the studio tracking room. We can see on here, we've got options for all of our aux mixes, as well as the main left and right, which I have selected now. So I do have my monitor outputs connected to the stream here. So you're listening to my mixer through my monitor output. So I'm going to be able to change this around. So I've got that option, and then I've got a cue option, which comes in very handy. And we're actually going to select that, and I'm going to leave that there. And then we have our fader here so we can control the level of that output. And I've got mine set about right there because that's what's appropriate for my setup here. So I'm going to leave that on cue, and I'm going to close that. And now what that basically means is any channel on the mixer that I have cued will be sent to your monitor output. And so we can use that to our advantage in a few ways. For now, what I'm going to do is, I'll unmute that, I'm going to cue the 2-track playback channel because that's what we want to be listening to for the most part. That is going to be our DAW session, right? So that, for the most part, when we're listening to the DAW session, we can listen to this. If at any point we want to listen to anything individually, so let's say we want to hear what's happening directly on the channel in the mixer versus our master output from the DAW, pardon me, I would go and I would cue that channel instead. So I could uncue the 2-track playback, so I'm not listening to my DAW session anymore, and I want to just hear what's happening on some channels in the mixer here. I cue those are going right out to my monitor outputs, and I can hear that directly in my studio or my tracking room, wherever I am. And that really gives us a nice advantage of being able to tap into multiple sources throughout your recording setup here. And additionally, we can cue the main as well. So if we want to hear kind of the complete mix on the mixer itself, I can just cue that main there, and I'm listening to that instead of listening to the output from my DAW session. Okay, so it's going to be different. So we can listen to what's happening from the DAW, or we can just listen to what's happening on the mixer itself. If we've got all of our channels directed back to the mixer here, and we've got things set up to track, we can actually listen to things on the mixer, which is pretty handy. Okay. So let me let's talk about tracking. I think that's my next topic here. So we've got this set up. We're all configured in our DAW. We're all configured on the mixer. So far our routing is set up and configured accordingly. Now we want to track an artist or a number of artists. We're going to use our aux outputs to set up custom headphone monitors for our performers. And I'm going to actually pull up a different DAW session real quick, something that I've already created. Open. Yep. Let's do that one. Oh, no, I don't want to save that. Do it again. No save. All right, here we go. Okay, so now I have a full 24-channel mix. You know, we're recording. We're having a good time. I'm going to set this to loop. Okay, so I'm going to use this to kind of demonstrate the remainder of our workflow here. So, just to show you, actually, I've already pre-configured this as I just explained. If you were to take a look at the routing matrix here, view routing matrix. Here we are. Now I've got all 24 channels being pulled from their inputs on the mixer, directed to the master output, and then I don't have this set up. Oh, I do. There we are. Got to get far enough, and then so everything being rerouted or additionally routed back to its individual output. Now on my mixer, if I were just to want to kind of get this all back through my mixer, I would want to engage track on all of these channels. It's a good idea to have that running anyway. So you have the option at any time to play all of this back directly from the DAW and listen to your 2-track. Alrighty, back to the DAW for a second. Now I'm going to collapse this a little bit. So let's say we're tracking an artist, we're tracking a vocalist, right? So we've got our ensemble tracked for the most part here. And now we've got an individual artist in here, and we're going to build a headphone mix for them. What we're going to want to do is, again, so however they want to be listening to their tracks, if everything has been tracked and you're just listening to playback from the DAW and then recording them, maybe they have an additional musician that is playing along with them for reference. I know a lot of times when drums are being tracked, it's not uncommon for the drummer to play along with the guitar player. Just for reference, to stick with the song. Well, the guitar player is not being recorded, the drums are being recorded, but the drummer needs something to play along to. So you could have a live musician playing along with your tracking artist, or you're just playing tracks back from your DAW directly for your tracking artist, or you have maybe a complete ensemble that is just tracking from the beginning into the session. Either way we have this, we can direct this however we need to build a complete and functioning headphone mix for our tracking artist. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up a aux mix. So on the mixer here, I have 14 aux outputs, which can be linked to create a stereo pair. And to do that, I'm just going to simply select the aux here and enter into its master output processing. And just to show you that one more time, from within my aux channel here, within my aux mix here, I select the main output, the name of the master output for that aux. Like that. That takes me into my channel processing, my output processing. I go to setup and I hit this link button right here, right at the top of the screen next to the name field. One more time. Confirm that. And now you can see auxes 1 and 2 are now linked together. So this is functioning as one mix, utilizing outputs 1 and 2 as a stereo output. So I can come back into my mix here and I can set up any mix that I want to for this performer, and then I take the outputs and then maybe I route them to a headphone amplifier, which is going to drive their monitoring can so that they can perform. And then I have this mixer available to me, so I can build any mix I want, anything that they want to hear, so that they are the most comfortable while they are tracking. And because all of my channels are set to track here, so I can return them from the DAW session, that gives me the ability to give them any mix they want, however it is set up. And again, if they're not pulling from the DAW, you can just connect whatever your sources are directly into here, and you only be recording the individual person that is recording at that time. But because I've got this set to track, I can very easily build whatever mix I need to for our performer here, including giving them processing. So let's say I'm going to pull up some channels here. We're going to get this session going. Yada, yada, yada. So I give them whatever they need. In my DAW session here, I'm going to arm the channel that they're going to be recording on. Okay, now let's pull that file back. This is actually going to be my kick drum, so this won't make a lot of sense, but I've got my microphone connected into channel 1. We're just going to do another little experiment. And with everything routed back, set to track, if I hit play here and record, yep. So we're listening to that mix, and I am recording. I am a singer. I am very good at singing. I'm not. So there you go. That's how easy it is. And the performer, was listening to this mix in their headphones. I've got my control room mix. They've got their headphone mix. I can go as far as to apply processing to these channels if I want. If I want to give them some presets, I can do that. I can, manipulate the EQ. I can give them some compression. I can give them effects. So we can really set their mix up, their headphone mix, to make them as comfortable as possible and really sweeten it for them so that they can deliver the best performance, and just really, really kind of be comfortable and confident in that studio environment. And this is something that, just a generic, regular interface just isn't capable of doing. It's really difficult to create really good sounding or customized monitor mixes for performers. You kind of get what you get with a lot of them. And most of the time you're just listening to yourself dry with kind of a quasi mix of the song you're tracking to or whatever it is. But with this tool, you can get as complex as you want to, and you can get as custom as you need to, so everybody's comfortable, and you're driving the best possible recording that you can get. And additionally, we can do this up to 7 different mixes. So with our full 14 mixes here, I can stereo link all 14 of them, which gives me 7 stereo mixes. So you could have 7 different headphone mixes if you have like a larger ensemble that's all in the tracking room simultaneously, versus a individualized, isolated instrument tracking session. You got up to 7 headphone mixes that you can customize, and you can give each player exactly what they want to hear in their mix, which is really, really advantageous. It's a nice feature to have on here. And this is completely separate from what's going into the DAW. You're building this complete from scratch, individualized within all of these auxes, so they're hearing exactly what they want to hear, and it's just really sweet. And I think that takes us through that section there. So let's go ahead and talk about the final product here.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah.
Real quick, sorry. We have a question that popped up about, is there an issue with latency doing it like this?
Doing it like this, typically there isn't. But if you are experiencing latency, the way you get around that is by adjusting your I/O buffer, and I'll show you that. So you're going to have a setting in your DAW, and every DAW, every audio software has what's called an I/O buffer. And in a recording environment, it's usually set to something that's relatively high. And I can actually find that here. I think that's in my options. And buffering. Advanced I/O options. Yeah. So I've got my right buffer is my right buffer size. So this is what you want to be adjusting. This is extremely high on mine. So what you want to do is set this to somewhere around like 128 to 64, depending on what your processor can handle. And that is going to take your latency down to around 2 milliseconds or below. So that is how you would overcome that if you're experiencing a higher latency in this setup. That was a good question. And that was actually going to come up a little bit later too. But yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about mixdown. So once you've got everything tracked, pretend I've got everything all set here. I'm going to delete my stupid recording there, and I've got my actual channels here. We've recorded everything, and we're ready to mix it down. Typically, the mixdown process would be done in the DAW, which is pretty standard procedure, and that's fine, and many people are comfortable doing that. However, there is a way that you can perform the mixdown using the TouchMix itself, which gives you the ability to kind of take advantage of its workflow, which might be a little quicker, a little more advanced, and a little more intuitive than clicking around with your mouse.
Jason, before you jump into the next thing, we had a good question.
Okay.
So let's make Jace Corbin's mic live. Are we able to do that, Jacob?
Yep, he's
Okay.
live. If he has a microphone, he can speak. Chase.
Hello. Are you there?
He might not have his mic on, but he says when you're adding processing, like effects and compression and EQ to a recording for the monitor mix, is the recording in the DAW raw?
Yes.
Or does the processing, is it recorded with it?
No. So the processing on the mixer will never pass over the USB into the DAW. So you can set up any processing you want on the mixer in your main tracking session, and you won't hear that at all in the recording session. It's going to go in there dry to leave that part of it up to you at the end, which is exactly what we're going to talk about now. So now we've reached that point. We've tracked everything. Everything is raw. We built those headphone mixes for our performers, and it sounded great. They loved it, and they delivered awesome performances. They were super awesome. And I've said the word awesome way too many times in the last 5 seconds. Now we're ready to track. So everything is dry. You will not hear any of the processing on or in the DAW session that you're using on the mixer itself. And that is because no matter what you're doing on the mixer, the USB connection is pulling the signal directly from the preamps at all times. So yeah, so there you go. Let's go ahead and figure out how to actually use the mixer processing in real time. So we're going to be doing this in our mixdown portion of our recording, our recording session. And typically, and for a musical application, a mixdown equals, a stereo mix. So you have your individual track session. So I've got 24 individual recorded tracks here. I'm going to mix them down to a single stereo channel. And again, for most applications, you're going to do this within the DAW. However, using the TouchMix itself for this process has many advantages. And the first thing we need to do to build this, and we're going to get a little tricky with our routing at this point, we're going to add a stereo channel in our DAW session. So that's step one. Is I'm going to go to track. I'm going to say insert new track, and there, put it right in the middle. I want to actually take this to the end. I want this to be the very bottom track in my session. All right, now I'm going to arm this, and I'm going to set this up with a stereo input. So I want to make this a stereo track as opposed to a mono track. And what I'm going to select here is actually inputs 31 and 32 on my options here. So in my routing options for this new track, I'm going to select stereo. So I'm telling it is a stereo channel. And then its source is going to be inputs 31/32 on the TouchMix. Now, what that means on the TouchMix here is that now I've just selected this channel, our stereo 2-track channel, as the input source for this track. Okay, so what this is actually the main output. So our master output by default is sent to this recording channel on the mixer to be recorded as a stereo recording. Now we're using this as the source in this new DAW channel that I've created, right? So basically what we've done by doing this is route the master output of the mixer back into a new track in the DAW. So that's our first part of this. So now we can actually hear the output of the mixer in our DAW session on this new channel. So when we start manipulating things on the DAW, we're now hearing those changes in our DAW session through this channel. Cool. Now, a couple other things we need to do with this is we need to route the outputs very specifically. And I will do this a couple of different ways. Yeah, mixer. So here's our new channel here. And it is, I'm going to add a new send. Here we go. I want to send this to hardware. There we go. So I'm going to add a new hardware output here. And I'm going to send this.
Can you put us back on your Reaper window?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Good catch. Okay. Wow. You saw none of that then. I'll redo that real quick. I'm going to delete this. I am going to build a new track. And when I engage that, I have routing options. So I'm going to set this up as a stereo. I'm going to get 31 and 32 right there so I can see inputs 31 and 32 are where this is coming from. And now on the channel in the mixer here, I click on the routing options. Boop, and that gives us this. And I'm going to say add new hardware output. And I'm going to direct it right back to outputs 31 and 32, which is the 2-track playback channel. Okay, so we're taking the 2-track record channel on the mixer, sending it into this channel in our DAW session, and then routing the same channel back out to the 2-track playback channel. So we've created a big loop. Okay, so our master output from the DAW is now coming in, or from the mixer is coming in through this channel and then returning back to the 2-track playback channel. The other thing we want to do specifically with this channel is we do not want to send this to the master output in the DAW itself. We only want it to go back to our 2-track playback channel. This is important. So I'm going to uncheck that there and say, okay, now if we look at the router here, we'll see how that reflects in here. So I've got my here's 25, which is my new stereo channel. Notice, and now whoops, I screwed that up. Now, so this box is not checked, so this is not going to my master output. And if I follow it over here, there we go. Now it is going back to the stereo 31 and 32, which you can see our master output is also going there because we already set up our master output to go there as well. So now we have these two sources going to our master output. So now we can choose what we want to hear on that output, and we do that simply by muting one or the other in the DAW session. So if I go back to my mixer view here, I've got my master output channel over here. If I mute this channel, bam, now we are only listening to this channel back to that 2-track playback channel. So we're getting a direct loop of the master output through the DAW back out to the mixer. So if we're listening to, if we keep this queued, if we're listening to this here, we are going to be listening to the main outputs, basically kind of roundabout back through the DAW. And because all of our additional channels are set to return to their individual channels, and we've got them set to track here, so now the DAW is serving all of our recorded tracks back through their channels in the mixer itself, and now we're listening to the mixer output here. So as we start to build a mix on the mixer, we will hear that reflected through the 2-track playback channel, and now we're using the actual mixer to create a mix. Let me just build a preliminary kind of mix here. And just get some channels happening. All right, those are levels. Now there is one final thing that we need to do here. We need to unassign our 2-track playback channel from the main. So by default, this channel is going to show up in this mix, in our main mix here, because in typical operation, if we were recording to a hard drive or something, or if this was in a live scenario, if we had recorded something on here on a hard drive, we would listen to it back on this channel through the main outputs. We want to hear that, through our speakers or whatever we're listening to this on. In this case, by sending this back to the main output, we're creating a feedback loop. So that's going to be really ugly. So we're going to come in here and unassign that from the main. Perfect. So now it's not going to the main output. We're only hearing this through our studio monitors, and it is receiving the signal from the DAW, which is coming from here, which is the master output. I know it's kind of complicated and a little convoluted, but if you kind of follow what I did there, it'll all work, I promise. Now I've got a fader mix here, and if I were to hit this, let's make sure I'm not going to kill everybody. If I just hit play in my DAW session, I'm on cue, start. There we go. All right. There we go. So we can see all my channels are receiving from their channels in the DAW. So I've got all my individual channels in my mix here, and we're listening to it. Watch, if I take that off, now we don't hear it. Okay, so that's how that works. I can do that. And if I start applying processing, let's see if I find my vocals here. Do you see that? As I increase my fader levels, I'm hearing those changes. If I were to apply processing to this, get some reverb on him. Yeah. So there you go. So I can use the mixer for my mixdown. Additionally, any processing I apply in the DAW, if I go back to here, if I start getting effects going here, let's see, where's my vocals? 22. I have other options here as well. Let's see here, go to, where is my, here we go. I can go, yeah, one knob driver. And I got this, so if I hit play, and this is just a rough example of putting something on here. And if I actually solo that out in the DAW, I'm not hearing it, right? Because of the way we routed this. So if we want to solo a channel, we're going to now do that on the mixer itself. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. And I can do that a couple of ways. Since we've got the cue system set up the way it is, if I want to solo out a channel, I can unassign my master mix here and then just go cue that channel individually. Let's get something a little more obvious. Or I'll put it on the right track. That would help. There we go. So, I mean, obviously not the most attractive effect here, but get the idea that we're hearing this processing, happening in the mixer, as well as the processing that's happening on the mixer. So that is nice. So again, so what I did now is I used the cue section to kind of do this, but that's sort of a two switch move. I have to uncue one thing and then cue the thing that I want to actually hear, right? There's another mode for this cue system which can really accelerate this process and make this workflow even better, and that is your solo in place. I'll show you that one more time. So if you go into the menu and you go to mixer setup, you have this cue mode option here which says solo in place, and if I engage that, there we are. Now that is turned on. If I go back out to my mix, now all my cue buttons are red and they say SIP, solo in place. What this does is it actually turned that button's function into an actual solo button, and it solos that channel out in the main mix. So instead of having to cue it, we can just hit this directly and it'll solo it. So if we were to now keep this 2-track playback cued at all times, we can hear that. So if I hit play, we're hearing that. And at any point in my mix, as I'm working on my mix, if I want to solo something, I just hit that button, just like hitting the solo button in your DAW session. So I've got a complete full mix ready workflow here on the mixer, plus all of the processing and the tools on the mixer. And I can also use processing and the tools in my DAW as well if I need to do that. And we'll be able to hear all of that stuff in real time as we mix our mix down. And then at the end, once you've got it sounding good and you're happy with it, I'm clearly not done with this mix, but let's say we finished it and we got it sounding really super cool and really sweet. We'd make John Graves very proud of us with our mix here. Minimize, where's my minimize bar? Come on, give it. There it is. Oh, thank you. Oof. Okay, now, so we're listening to everything on this channel and we're kind of just playing our session back and applying our processing and creating our mix. Once we've got it dialed in, we just reset that timeline here. With this channel armed, we could hit record. Got to switch my view again. Here, I'll run that one more time. Nope. Stop. So with this channel, we've been listening to everything through this channel, right? And we're mixing on the mixer, mixing in the DAW, and we've got everything cool and it sounds really good. Now again, with this channel armed, we can reset our playhead and hit record and let that track play through. With the mix on the mixer and anything you've applied in your DAW here, that session will essentially be bounced down into this stereo track as your stereo mix, and then there's your stereo mix down as a stereo file. And you see it's going along there and just doing its thing, and that's it. So after that, you could take it to mastering or whatever your plans are for that track once you've done your mix down. But that's the process, and that's how you set everything up and get all your routing configured and some of the different options that are available on the mixer itself. With that, just as a quick aside, a quick bonus, with the ability to kind of be running processing in the DAW and hearing that back through the mixer, through the monitor actually, the answer to the question that happened earlier was hard no. If you're using the monitor feature here, that eliminates the latency. So there's no latency when we're using our monitor tool. However, if you're listening to this through the main outputs, let's say we're actually in a live scenario, we're not in recording, but we have a laptop or something with us, and we have some plugins or applications, on the laptop that we want to be able to use in real time. You can do that using the setup that I just showed you by routing your channels into the DAW and then returning them to themselves. That means that any processing you apply on the channel in your DAW session, you can hear that in real time out of the channel on the mixer by engaging it to track, right? So now with this track, it's basically going in a loop. It's going out into the DAW and then returning back to the channel right there. And then so any processing you're placing on that channel in your DAW session, you're going to hear that back through the channel in real time. Now, through the main outputs, as opposed to the monitor, which is how we have it set up in our recording studio, through the main outputs, there will be latency. And so to overcome that in that application, in that scenario, then you would need to go into your DAW session and reset your I/O buffer. And so then again, that's in here. Go in your preferences, and you want your buffering options, your advanced options there. So you'd set that to something about where it is actually, about 65K. So yeah, that's it. Any questions? I know it was got a little complicated with all routing and stuff like that, but if you get all of this worked out and routed correctly, this is an incredible tool to have in the studio, and it just really elevates the tracking process and the recording process and the mixdown process all in one. It's pretty fantastic. So yeah, that's what I got. That's the end of the lesson. Any questions at this time? I'd love to take them on and kind of close this out here.
We don't have any coming through.
Okay.
Maybe people are taking their time typing them in, but
very good. Well, I guess I can wait another few seconds to see if anyone wants to drop a question or two. But otherwise, be on the lookout for the recording once this is over. I'm going to try to get this out by the end of the day today for you. So if you did want to come back and review any of this, you have that ability. Also going to go ahead and plug my webinars for next week. On Tuesday, we're going to do one in the afternoon, Pacific time, talking about using the channel groups. So we're going to go over mute groups, DCAs, subgroups, and how to take advantage of all those in multiple ways in various applications. That's a really, really good one. Come back for that. And then Friday, we're doing, I believe it's just advanced workflow features. So it's things that are kind of in the mixer that are really, really powerful and really helpful tools that don't really get brought to light a lot, but are really, really helpful if you know that they're there and know how to use them. So we'll be running through that kind of stuff next week, and very shortly we will have the calendar updated with all of our dates in June. So we have another full month of webinars in June that we're going to serve up to you. So I hope you come by for some of those.
Participants have access to the past sessions. We just had that question come in.
So each recording session is basically delivered or sent out to anybody who had registered for that webinar at that point. That's how we're working it right now. So if you had registered or participated, you will get the link to that recording. Even if you weren't able to make it, if you had registered, we send it out to our complete registration list, whether you actually attended or not. So a good thing to do might be to just register for our webinars. At this point, we're not running caps on our attendance. So any number of people can sign up. Go ahead if you're curious about any of the topics and are unsure if you can make it or not. Just sign up, and regardless if you're there or not, you'll get the recording once it's over. For any of them that have already happened, and you weren't registered and you didn't get those recordings, if you just email me, go ahead and email me directly, or if you're on the Facebook user group, I'm on there. You can find me on there. Go ahead and just send me a PM or send me an email, and I'd be happy to send you those links so you can check those out. I'm fine with that. Good question. Any others?
Looks like we got them all.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, then that looks like the end here, guys. Really appreciate you stopping by this morning or afternoon or night or whatever time it is for you. Appreciate having you. Hopefully this was useful to you. Hopefully you learned something, and I hope you guys come back for the webinars that we've got planned in the future. So with that, I will say goodbye. Thanks a lot.